12 years of silent sorrow, shattered by a housekeeper's young daughter. Staring at his lost son's portrait, she whispers, "Sir, this boy, he lived with me at the children's home." For 12 years, billionaire Julian Croft lived as a phantom in his own mansion, his immense fortune a hollow shield against a sorrow that devoured him. It was an anniversary of a loss that banished the laughter from his halls. His son Leo was just a memory, a smiling 4-year-old boy captured in a portrait above the mantel, a light long since snuffed out. Then a noise broke the suffocating silence. The new housekeeper's daughter, a child in a place where children were an agonizing reminder. She wasn't looking at the powerful, broken man. She was frozen, her eyes fixed on the painting, and with a whisper she took a sledgehammer to the stone mausoleum of his heart. "Sir, this boy, he lived with me in the children's home. And before we start, where in the world are you watching from today? Let me know in the comments. Enjoy the story." A forgotten portrait held the key to a dozen years of silence. Julian Croft believed his son was gone forever, but his new housekeeper's daughter knew a secret hidden in the painted eyes. The grand hallway of Blackwood Estate was silent. The only sound was the distant chime of a grandfather clock, counting the seconds of a life half-lived. Julian Croft stood before the massive granite fireplace, a phantom in his own home. It was the anniversary. 12 years. 12 years since the laughter had been stolen from these halls. 12 years since his son Leo had disappeared from a verdant city park. Julian was a man who commanded the city's skyline. His name was engraved on skyscrapers and sprawling urban developments. He was a billionaire. He was powerful, and he was completely broken. The fortune was a shield, but the sorrow was a sickness beneath it. His gaze, as it always did, locked onto the portrait above the mantel. It was a painting of a 4-year-old boy commissioned just weeks before he was taken. The boy had Julian's dark, intense hair, but his mother's bright, impossibly inquisitive eyes. He was smiling, his small hand clutching a toy rocket. The artist had captured the light in him, a light that had been snuffed out. A small sound, a shuffling of feet, broke the suffocating silence. Julian turned, his annoyance a cold, sharp point. He had given strict orders. He was not to be disturbed. Not today. It was the new housekeeper, Maria, a quiet, efficient woman who had started 2 weeks ago. She was clutching a cleaning cloth, her face pale with fear. She was not supposed to be in this wing, and she was not alone. Hiding half behind her, a small, slender girl with large brown eyes and a cascade of dark hair stared at him. She looked to be about 12. "Mr. Croft, sir, I am so sorry," Maria whispered, her voice trembling. "My bus, it was delayed this morning. I had no one. I told her to stay in the kitchen." "Sophia, I told you." Julian's glare was frost. He did not like children, not anymore. They were an agonizing reminder of a life that was not his. "The kitchen is downstairs, Maria. See that she returns to it." "Yes, sir. Right away. Come on, Sophia." "Now!" Maria's voice was a low, terrified hiss. She tugged at the girl's arm, but the girl, Sophia, didn't move. She was frozen. She wasn't looking at Julian or the fireplace or the vast, intimidating room. Her eyes were fixed on the portrait, her head tilted, her expression shifting from curiosity to a deep, profound confusion. It was as if she were trying to place a memory that didn't belong. "Sophia," Maria pleaded, pulling harder. "We have to go." The girl took one step, then another, moving away from her mother and toward the fireplace. She stopped just short of the hearth, looking up at the painting of the smiling 4-year-old. "That's enough," Julian said. His voice was not loud, but it cracked like a whip. "This is a private space. You will leave." Sophia turned to him. Her face was ashen. Her brown eyes were wide, not with fear of him, but with a startling, impossible recognition. "Sir," the girl whispered, her voice shaking, "this boy, he lived with me at the children's home." The words echoed in the cavernous hall. Maria let out a strangled gasp, her hand flying to her mouth. "Sophia, stop this! What are you saying? That is Mr. Croft's son. Apologize to him right now." The air left Julian's lungs. The floor seemed to drop away. He felt the blood drain from his face, a cold, prickling sensation that left him dizzy. He gripped the back of a leather armchair. "Billionaire's face goes pale," a headline might have screamed. It was true. He felt sick. "What did you say?" His voice was a rasp. "Sophia, you're mistaken," Maria wept, her eyes frantic. She knew the story. Everyone who worked here did. The unspeakable tragedy of Julian Croft. "That boy, he passed away years ago." "No," Sophia insisted. She was trembling, but her gaze was steady. "He didn't pass away. He was at St. Michael's home. I knew him. We called him Daniel." Julian stared. He saw his wife's face, pale and thin on a hospital pillow. "He's gone, Julian. Let him go." He had spent 12 years building a mausoleum around his heart. Now, a 12-year-old girl was taking a sledgehammer to the stone. "That is impossible," Julian said, the words hollow. "My son is dead." "He isn't," Sophia cried, stung by his tone. "He was older when I knew him, but it's him. I know it's him. He had the same eyes. He used to draw pictures all the time, pictures of the city skyline and a big black dog." Julian staggered. He physically recoiled as if she had struck him. "A black dog, Max. A black Labrador retriever. Leo's shadow. A detail so specific, so private. It was never released to the press. The media knew. Kidnapped. They knew. Ransom note. They knew. Presumed dead. They did not know. Max. You're lying," he whispered, but the accusation had no power. "I am not. He was my friend." Sophia's eyes filled with tears. "He protected me. They called him Silent Daniel because he didn't talk. Not for a long time, but he talked to me. He said he wasn't an orphan. He said his real name started with an L, but he couldn't remember it. He said his dad was important and was going to come for him, but no one believed him." Maria was openly sobbing. "Mr. Croft, please. She's my adopted daughter. I got her from St. Michael's 3 years ago. I used to volunteer there." Julian's head snapped toward Maria. "You adopted her?" "Yes, sir," Maria said, wiping her eyes. "She was there since she was 5. I met her while I was volunteering. I adopted her when I was finally able." "Please, she gets confused sometimes." Julian's mind was racing. Adopted from St. Michael's, the same place as... He straightened his suit jacket, his hands shaking so violently he balled them into fists. "Maria, take your daughter to my study, now." He turned and looked back at the portrait, the smiling boy, the lost light. He said his dad was important and was going to come for him. A dozen years of ice around his heart began to crack. Julian's study was a tomb of dark walnut and unread leather-bound books. It smelled of old money and stale air. A single lamp cast a pool of light on the massive desk. Maria guided Sophia to a stiff-backed chair. Sophia sat on the edge, her feet not touching the rug. Maria stood by the door, twisting a cleaning cloth, her eyes darting between her daughter and employer. Julian Croft did not sit. He stood by the cold, unlit fireplace, his back to them for a long moment. He was trying to breathe. 12 years? 12 years of ghosts. 12 years of slamming doors on hope because hope was a poison. It was the thing that had destroyed his wife. Isabella had chased every lady, visited every psychic, paid every fraud who promised a vision. It had hollowed her out until she was nothing but a fragile whisper. And then silence. Julian had chosen a different path. He had entombed his grief. He had accepted the unacceptable. And now this child, this 12-year-old girl with eyes as dark and clear as a night sky. He turned, his face a mask of control. Start from the beginning. Don't leave anything out. Sophia swallowed. The room was so quiet she could hear the heavy tick-tock of the grandfather clock in the hall. I was 5 when I went to St. Michael's, Sophia began, her voice small. I don't remember my birth parents. Mama Maria? She's the only mom I've ever really had. I met her when she was a volunteer. She adopted me 3 years ago. But before that, I was at St. Michael's. And the boy, Julian said, his voice flat. Tell me about the boy. They called him Daniel, Sophia said. He was already there when I got there. He was in the older boys' dorm. I think he was maybe 9 or 10 then. He was really quiet. The nuns called him Silent Daniel because he didn't talk. Not for a long, long time. Julian's heart hammered against his ribs. Leo had been a talkative, bright, noisy child. Silent Daniel. What trauma could do that to a boy? He would just sit by the window in the recreation room, Sophia continued, her gaze distant, lost in the memory. He would draw. He drew all the time. He drew on scrap paper, on napkins, once on the wall, and Sister Catherine was so mad. But he was good. He drew buildings, tall buildings, and the skyline. Julian's breath hitched, the penthouse view. And he drew dogs, Sophia said, her voice dropping. A big black dog. He told me. After he started talking, he told me. What? Julian's voice was sharp. What did he tell you? He told me he missed his dog. He said his name was Max. Maria let out a small sob and covered her mouth. Julian felt his knees weaken. Max, it was true. A detail so small, so private. He said Max loved to run in the park, Sophia added, and chase squirrels. He said the dog would bark and bark, but the squirrels were too fast. It was a perfect memory, a snapshot from a life that was stolen. Julian remembered it. A crisp autumn afternoon in the city park. Leo just turned 4, laughing hysterically as Max chased a squirrel up an oak tree. He said the dog would bark and bark. How? Julian struggled to speak. How do you know this boy, Daniel, is the boy in the painting? His eyes, Sophia said simply. I never forget eyes. And this. She reached into the pocket of her simple dress and pulled out a small folded piece of paper. It was old, the creases worn through. It was a child's drawing. She handed it to him. Julian's hand was shaking so badly he could barely take it. He unfolded it. It was a crude drawing done in crayon, a stick figure of a small girl with dark hair holding hands with a taller stick figure boy. Above them, a large, poorly drawn dog with black scribbles. He gave it to me, Sophia whispered. I was crying because one of the older boys, Marcus, he tried to take my bracelet. She touched a thin silver chain around her wrist. Julian's eyes followed the movement. Where did you get that? He asked. My grandpa, Sophia said, her chin lifting with a bit of pride. Mama's dad, Sergeant Miguel Vargas. He's a veteran. He came with Mama to volunteer at St. Michael's one day. He met me. He said I was a brave soldier. He gave me this bracelet and told me to never forget it. Maria spoke, her voice shaky. My father, he saw something in her. He told me, that one's a fighter, Maria. That's when I knew I had to adopt her. It took me almost a year after that to get the paperwork through. Julian nodded. Miguel Vargas, he knew that name. A decorated local hero. A man known for his rigid honesty and unbendable will. This was not a family of liars. Daniel gave me the drawing, Sophia continued, looking back at the paper in Julian's hand. He didn't say anything to Marcus. He just stood in front of me. He stared at him. He didn't even look mad. He just looked like my grandpa does sometimes. Marcus got scared and gave my bracelet back. Daniel gave me this drawing after. He said it was so I would remember I had a protector. Julian stared at the drawing. A protector. His son, who he had failed to protect. You said Maria adopted you 3 years ago, Julian said, his mind working. What happened to Daniel? He ran away, Sophia said softly. It was about a week before Mama came to get me. So yes, about 3 years ago. He was getting older. He would have been 13 or 14. He hated it there. He told me he was going to find his real house. He said he remembered a gate, a big iron gate with a letter on it. Julian's gaze flew to the window, to the massive, winding driveway, and the wrought iron gates at the entrance. The gates that bore a single stylized C for Croft. He told me he was going to find his dad, Sophia said, her eyes filling with tears. And then he was gone. The nun said he ran away. I never saw him again. Julian felt a surge of rage so powerful it almost knocked him off his feet. Rage at the kidnappers, at the police, at the world, and at this children's home. St. Michael's home, Julian said, his voice low and dangerous. Where is it? He was already moving to his desk, grabbing his phone. He would call his head of security, Simon. He would call the police commissioner. Sir, Maria said, her voice shaking with fear. That's the other thing. Julian paused, the phone in his hand. Sophia looked at the floor. You can't go there, sir. It's gone. Gone? What do you mean, gone? It burned down, Sophia whispered, about a week after Daniel ran away. It was a big fire. Everything was gone. The records, the rooms, everything. That's why Mama came to get me so fast. The county was moving all us kids. She filed the adoption papers just in time. The room was silent again. But this was not the silence of grief. It was the silence of a conspiracy. A boy who knows too much runs away. A week later, the entire home, all the records, all the proof of his existence, burns to the ground. It wasn't a tragedy. It was a cleanup. Julian looked at Sophia. She was just a child. But she wasn't just a housekeeper's daughter anymore. She was the only living link to his son. Maria, Julian said, his voice cold and clear, you and your daughter will not be returning to the staff quarters. You will move into the West Guest Wing tonight. Maria's eyes went wide. Sir, I don't understand. You are not my housekeeper anymore, Julian said. He looked at Sophia, at the worn-out drawing still clutched in his hand. You are under my protection, and you, he said to Sophia, are going to help me find my son. The command was so absolute, Maria could only nod, her hand clutching Sophia's shoulder. Mr. Croft, you don't have to, she started. This is not a request, Maria. It is a necessity. Julian's voice was flat, cutting off her protest. If what your daughter says is true, and I am beginning to believe it is, then she is the only person alive who can identify my son. That makes her a target. The color drained from Maria's face. She hadn't thought of that. Julian saw a threat, a loose end in a 12-year-old plot. A target? Maria whispered, pulling Sophia closer. The fire, Julian said, his mind working like a cold engine. Tell me about the fire. It was on the news, Maria said, trying to remember. They said it was an accident, old wiring. It was the main building, the administration offices. It happened very late at night. The offices, Julian repeated. Not the dormitories. Sophia shook her head. No, sir. We were safe. But Sister Catherine, the head nun, she was crying so hard the next day. She kept saying, it's all gone. 30 years of history, the records all gone. That's when all the kids had to be moved. It was chaos. Julian nodded slowly. A surgical fire. An accident that conveniently destroyed only the proof. This was no accident. This was a message. "I need to speak with your father," Julian said to Maria. "Sergeant Vargas, does he live with you?" "Yes, sir, in our apartment." "He's retired. He doesn't trust people easily, sir, especially wealthy people." "Good," Julian said. A small, grim smile touched his lips. "A man who doesn't trust easily is exactly what I need right now." He turned to his desk, his mind made up. The fog of grief was burning away, replaced by the white-hot fire of purpose. "Maria, take Sophia to the kitchen. My head housekeeper, Mrs. Gable, will get you food. I will have my head of security, Simon, meet you there. He will show you to the West Wing. You will not speak of this to any other staff. You will not answer any questions. Your job as a housekeeper is finished. You understand?" Maria, terrified but seeing the iron resolve in his eyes, nodded. "Yes, sir." She started to lead Sophia out, but Julian's voice stopped them. "Sophia." The girl turned. Julian walked around the desk and awkwardly knelt. It was an unfamiliar movement. He hadn't been on eye level with a child in a dozen years. The hope he felt was so new it was agonizing. "You did a very brave thing today," he said, his voice rough. "I just told the truth, sir," Sophia whispered. "Grandpa says the truth is a shield." Julian stared at her. "The truth is a shield. He's a wise man. I need you to be brave for a little while longer. I'm going to have Simon talk to you. I need you to tell him everything you told me. Every single detail about Daniel. Can you do that?" Sophia clutched her bracelet and nodded. "Will you find him?" The question was so simple, so pure. It hit Julian harder than any corporate negotiation. He stood up, his face hardening into a mask of determination. "If he is alive," Julian Croft said, "I will tear the world apart until I do." Maria and Sophia left, the heavy door clicking shut behind them. Julian stood alone in the study for a long moment, his hand resting on the phone. He looked at the portrait. The smiling boy, Leo, Daniel. "You protected her," he whispered to the painting. "Now I will protect her, and I will find you. I swear on your mother's grave, I will find you." He picked up the secure line on his desk and pressed a single button. "Simon, clear my schedule for the rest of the month." "No, I don't care about the Singapore deal. Cancel it. I have a situation at the estate, a private matter. I need you to move the new housekeeper, Maria, and her daughter, Sophia, to the West Wing. They are my personal guests. Put 2 men on that wing. No one in or out without my authorization. Yes, Simon, I am serious." He paused, his eyes fixed on the painting. "And get me everything. And I mean everything on a fire at St. Michael's Home for Boys 3 years ago. I want the police report, the insurance claim, the fire marshal's investigation. And I want to know who owned that building. Now." He pressed another button. "Send a car for Sergeant Miguel Vargas. Tell him it's about his granddaughter. Tell him it's an emergency." The kitchen was larger than their apartment. A vast space of steel, granite, and hanging copper pots. Mrs. Gable, the loyal head housekeeper, was confused. "Mr. Croft was very specific," Mrs. Gable said, placing 2 plates of chicken on the island. "He said you are to be treated as guests." It looked like a feast to Maria. "Mrs. Gable, Maria started, wringing her hands. "I don't know what's happening." "It is not my place to know, Maria," Mrs. Gable said, not unkindly, "and it is not yours to question. Eat. You both look like you've seen a ghost." Sophia, who had been silent, looked up at that. "Maybe we did," she whispered. Before Mrs. Gable could reply, a man entered. He wore a dark suit, his eyes missing nothing. He had a quiet, dangerous calm. "My name is Simon. I'm Mr. Croft's head of security. If you'll come with me, I'll show you to your suite." My father. He's coming, Maria said, her voice shaking. Yes, we sent a car for him. He will be brought to the study to meet Mr. Croft. I will take you to the West Wing. It's the safest place in the house. Safest. The word hung in the air, cold and heavy. The West Wing suite was a world away from the staff quarters. It had a sitting room, a fireplace, and 2 large bedrooms. Sophia walked to the window. It overlooked a vast, dark garden. Mama, Sophia said, I'm scared. Maria rushed to her side, hugging her tight. It's okay, baby, we're okay. Mr. Croft, he just wants to find his son. You did a good thing. Simon stood by the door. A man is stationed in the hall for your protection. Please don't leave the suite. Your meals will be brought to you. Maria nodded, her face pale. It's like a prison. It's a safe room, ma'am, Simon said. Mr. Croft believes your daughter's memory has made you both very valuable and very vulnerable. Good evening. He closed the door, and they heard the soft click of the lock. In the study, Julian stood opposite Sergeant Miguel Vargas. Miguel was in his 70s, lean and weathered with a steel spine and piercing dark eyes that held no fear. A billionaire did not impress him. My daughter is in your house, Miguel said, his voice firm. She called me crying. She said you put guards on her door. I don't like my family being held. Sergeant Vargas, thank you for coming. Please sit. I'll stand, Miguel said. They are not being held, Julian said. They are being protected. Protected from what? From you? You rich men think you can just buy people. Move them around like pieces on a board. This has nothing to do with my money, Julian said, his voice low. It has to do with my son, your granddaughter. She believes she knew him. Miguel's expression was steady. I know what she said. Sophia doesn't lie, but she's a child. It's a sad thing, Mr. Croft, but probably a mistake. She knew about his dog, Julian said. Miguel went still. She knew his name was Max, Julian continued. She knew he chased squirrels in the park. That was not in any newspaper. It was a private family memory. The old sergeant's eyes narrowed. As a military man, he understood the value of facts. A black dog, Miguel murmured. She told me about the boy, the one who protected her, the one who drew pictures. Your granddaughter, Julian said, is the first credible lead I have had in 12 years. She told me the home, St. Michael's, burned down 3 years ago, just 1 week after my son, Daniel, ran away. Miguel Vargas was no fool. He had survived a war by learning to smell a trap. A fire, Miguel said, to cover the tracks, to burn the records. Exactly, which means whoever took my son knows he was there, and if they find out that a little girl remembers him, that she can identify him, then the girl is a target, a loose end. The old soldier looked at the billionaire. For the first time, they were not 2 men from different worlds. They were 2 men with a shared purpose. What's your plan? Miguel asked. My head of security, Simon, is on his way to debrief Sophia. I'd like you to be there. She trusts you. She'll need you. And what are you doing? I'm finding out who lit the match, Julian said. Simon entered with a file, looking at Julian and the sergeant. Sir, the preliminary report on the fire. Go on, Julian said. St. Michael's Home for Boys. The fire was 3 years ago. The official report, signed by Fire Marshal Evans, ruled it accidental. Faulty electrical wiring. The building was a total loss. An accident, Julian said. I ran a check on Marshal Evans, Simon said, his voice flat. He filed for early retirement 2 weeks after signing that report. He moved to a golf community in Arizona, paid cash, bought a luxury RV, also cash, on a fire marshal's salary. Miguel let out a low, grim sound. He was paid off. A cleanup. It gets worse, sir, Simon said, opening the file. I checked the property records. St. Michael's wasn't owned by the diocese. It was owned by a non-profit foundation. What foundation? Julian asked. Simon looked at his boss. It was called the Orchard Foundation, a charitable trust. I ran the name, and its primary donor, its only donor for the last 15 years, was a holding company registered in Delaware. A cold dread, worse than the grief, settled in Julian's stomach. What holding company, Simon? Simon looked down at the paper. It was a subsidiary of Croft Development, sir. Your company. The room was absolutely silent. The clock ticked in the hall. Miguel stared at Julian. What did he say? Julian's face was white. He felt the blood pounding in his temples. He walked to his desk and gripped the edge. He said, Julian's voice was a low, shaking growl, that someone used my own money to fund the children's home that was hiding my son. The implication was horrifying. The kidnappers weren't strangers. The enemy wasn't outside the gates. The call was coming from inside the house. A single drop of sweat rolled down Julian's temple. The room was not warm, but he felt like he was suffocating. His own company, his own money. For 12 years he had been paying to keep his own son hidden. The betrayal was so deep, so complete, it was almost paralyzing. Miguel Vargas spoke first. Mr. Croft, you've had a viper in your nest for 12 years. Julian looked at the old sergeant, his eyes burning. A viper? He repeated. Yes. And I will cut its head off. He slammed the intercom. Simon, now! Simon entered, his face grim. He knew what the file meant. Who? Julian's voice was barely a whisper, but it carried the weight of a death sentence. Who in my company authorized the Orchard Foundation? Who signed the checks? Sir, that's a subsidiary, Simon said, phone in hand. It's managed by the Charitable Accounts Division, overseen by... Don't tell me who oversees it, Julian roared, his control finally snapping. I want the name of the person who created the account, the name of the person who approved the payments. I don't care if you have to wake up every accountant and lawyer in this city. I want that name on my desk in 1 hour. Yes, sir, Simon said, turning to leave. Wait, Miguel said. Simon and Julian both looked at him. You're going at this like a businessman, Miguel said to Julian. You're trying to find the money, that's good, but you're forgetting the heart. The girl. Julian's anger cooled, replaced by the cold, sharp focus of the problem. What about her? She's the only one who has seen him, Miguel said. What did life look like in that place? Who was in charge? Who came to visit? Those are the details that will find your boy. Julian nodded. The old man was right. Simon, you're with me on the finances. Send 2 of your best men you trust with your life, to the West Wing. I want them to talk to Sophia. And I want you, he said, looking at Miguel, to be in that room. She trusts you. She'll need you. Miguel nodded. I'll go now. No, Julian said. Wait for Simon's men. No one moves in this house alone tonight. Not until I know who the enemy is. In the West Wing, the silence was tense. Sophia sat on the carpet, knees to her chest. Maria paced by the cold fireplace. Grandpa! Sophia cried, running and throwing her arms around Miguel's waist as he entered. Miguel hugged her tight. Maria, you all right? We're scared, Dad, Maria whispered. I know, but you're safe here. Behind him stood 2 large men in dark suits, their faces blank. These gentlemen are here to ask Sophia some questions, Miguel said, guiding Sophia to the sofa. They work for Mr. Croft. I'll be right here with you. You just need to tell them what you remember. One man, Daniel, sat opposite Sophia, while the other stood by the door. Daniel had a kind face, but his eyes saw everything. Sophia, Daniel began, his voice gentle. We just want to talk about St. Michael's, about your friend, Daniel. Okay, she said. You said Sister Catherine was the head nun. Can you describe her? Sophia thought. She was very old and wrinkly. She wasn't mean, but she was scared. I remember that. Scared? Miguel asked. Scared of what? Of the visitors, Sophia said. Daniel's pen stopped moving. Who were the visitors, Sophia? They weren't for us, Sophia said, shaking her head. They were for Sister Catherine. They came at night sometimes. In a big black car. It was very quiet. A black car, Daniel repeated. Did you ever see the people in the car? Only once. Sophia's voice dropped. I had a stomach ache. I was in the infirmary on the first floor. I was looking out the window. The car pulled up. It was late. What did you see? A man got out. He was very tall. He was wearing a hat, and he had a ring. I remember because it shined when he pointed his finger at Sister Catherine. She looked like she was going to cry. A ring? Daniel said, leaning forward. What did it look like? It was big, gold, and it had a red stone in the middle. A dark red stone. He scared me. He looked up and I hid. I felt like he saw me, even in the dark. Miguel put a protective arm around her. It's okay, soldier. You're safe. Did Daniel ever see this man? Daniel asked. Sophia nodded. I think so. That's why he was scared. When he talked about them, he said they were liars. He said Sister Catherine was a liar. He said they pretend to be good, but they're monsters. That's what he said. Did Daniel ever say anything else about his home? Daniel asked. Just the dog, and the skyline, and the gate with the letter C, Sophia said. And his mother. He told me he missed his mother. He said she smelled like roses. Back in the study, Julian was pacing. The 1-hour deadline had passed. It was now 10 p.m. The secure line on his desk buzzed. He snatched it. Simon, tell me. I have the name, sir. The Orchard Foundation was chartered 15 years ago. The funds from our company were routed through 3 different accounts, but the signatory, the man who set it all up and approved the biannual donations, it was Edward Vance. Julian dropped the phone. It clattered against the desk. Edward Vance, his brother-in-law, his late wife's brother, Uncle Edward, the man who stood by him at Isabella's funeral, who wept and called Leo the son he never had. The man who ran the charitable arm of Croft Development, a position Julian had given him. He was here, Julian whispered. He was here this afternoon for the anniversary. Edward had come by as he did every year. 12 years, Julian. You should let him go. Isabella would want you to find peace. Peace. The man had told him to find peace while he was actively, knowingly hiding his son. The door opened. It was Simon. He looked at Julian's face and knew. You heard? Simon said. Edward, Julian said, the name tasting like ash. It was Edward. Sir, there's more. The report from the West Wing just came in. Julian's mind was consumed. What did the girl say? She said a man visited the home. A tall man. He terrified Sister Catherine. He came at night in a black car. She said he wore a ring. Sir, Simon said, his voice quiet. A large gold ring with a dark red stone. Julian froze. His eyes drifted to the side table. It was covered in silver-framed photographs. Him and Isabella, Leo in the park, and a picture from the last company gala. Him, Isabella, and her brother Edward, smiling. Julian picked up the frame. His hand was shaking. He looked at Edward's hand resting on Isabella's shoulder. On his right pinky finger was a large gold signet ring, the family crest. In the center was a dark red square-cut ruby. I'm going to kill him, Julian whispered. Sir, Simon said, we have to be smart. This is a 12-year conspiracy. He's a monster. He took your son and destroyed your wife. The fire, Julian said, his voice hardening. He had the fire marshal paid off. He had access, Simon said. He had the motive. He always thought you cheated Isabella. He thought the Croft fortune should have been split. So he stole my son, Julian said. He let my wife die of a broken heart. He let me rot in this house all for money. And now he knows, Simon said, his voice low. Or he will soon. The new housekeeper and her daughter moved to the West Wing. Guards on their door. You clearing your schedule. He's not stupid, sir. He's a snake. He will know something is wrong. He will know his secret is threatened. Julian's eyes met Simon's. Sophia, Julian said. He's going to go after the girl. The blood in Julian's veins turned to ice. He had an enemy. He had a name. And that enemy was family. He will go after the girl, Julian repeated. He won't get to her, sir, Simon said, his tone flat. The West Wing is locked down. My men are the best I have. But he will try, and he won't be obvious. Julian's mind was a whirlwind of betrayal. He knows this house. He knows the staff. He knows me. He knows your habits, Simon agreed. Today is the anniversary. He expects you to be a wreck. He expects you to be locked in this study, drinking. He expects you to be weak. Julian looked at the portrait of his son. Weak. He had been weak for 12 years, not anymore. That's your cover, sir, Simon said. You play the part of the broken man. I will handle the investigation. I need to find Edward's network. The fire marshal was one. Sister Catherine, where is she now? Find her, Julian ordered, and find out where Edward Vance is right now. Simon nodded and left. Julian was alone again. He looked at the silver-framed photograph. Him, Isabella, and Edward. Edward's hand resting on his sister's shoulder wore the heavy red-stoned ring. You sat at my table, Julian thought, his rage a physical sickness. You drank my wine. You wept at your sister's funeral. You told me to find peace. The private line on his desk buzzed. E. Vance. His heart hammered. The snake was calling. He was checking the trap. Julian let it ring. Once. Twice. He took a deep, shuddering breath. He closed his eyes, summoning the ghost of his grief, using it as a shield. He picked up the receiver. Edward, he said. His voice was gravelly, thick with exhaustion. A perfect performance. Julian, thank God. I was just checking on you. Edward's voice was smooth, oily, practiced sympathy. A difficult day, I know. I wasn't sure if I should call. Liar, you're fishing. It's fine, Edward, Julian mumbled. Just another year, you know. I know. A pause. Listen, I'm glad I caught you. Jim Franklin heard you canceled the Singapore trip. Is everything all right? You're not ill, are you? There it was. The hook. He knew Julian had changed his routine. Julian forced a long, weary sigh. I'm just tired, Edward. Tired of all of it. I just didn't have it in me. Not today. Another pause. Edward was processing this. It sounded plausible. Of course, Edward said, his voice dripping with false concern. I understand completely. That's why I'm calling. Why don't I come over? We can have a drink, just the two of us. For Isabella. For the boy. Julian's hand tightened on the receiver. Come over. He wanted to see the house. He wanted to know what was different. No, Julian said a little too quickly. He softened his tone. No, Edward, I appreciate it, but I'm turning in. I just want to be alone. Are you sure, Julian? I'm only 10 minutes away. I'm sure, Julian said, his voice firm but weary. Thank you, Edward. Good night. He hung up. He was shaking, not with fear, but with rage. He didn't believe me, Julian said to the empty room. He's coming. He buzzed Simon on the intercom. He's on his way. How? He's coming to the house. He suspects something. Let him come, sir, Simon's voice replied, calm and cold. The guards in the West Wing are dressed as maintenance. He won't see anything. But the perimeter team is active. We'll track him when he leaves. Just play the part. Be the grieving widower. In the West Wing, Miguel Vargas turned to his daughter and granddaughter, his face grim. Maria, the girl isn't just a witness. She's a soldier in this. She just fired the first shot. Now we need to give her the rest of her ammunition. He sat down on the sofa next to Sophia. Sophia, you did well with those men, but I want you to think. Not about the scary things. I want you to think about Daniel. I do, Grandpa. I know, but think harder. You remember details. You said he drew pictures of the skyline? Did he ever say where from? Sophia frowned. He said the house on the lake. He said his mama loved it. He said there were white chairs on the deck and a bird. A bird? Miguel asked. A metal bird on a pole. It spun in the wind, a silver one. He said his dad put it there. He said he could see it from his bedroom window. He said it made him feel safe. Miguel's eyes widened. Maria, does Mr. Croft have a lake house? I think so, Dad. It's in the file. We need to tell Mr. Croft, Miguel said. That's real intelligence. Just then, Sophia gasped, her hand flying to her bracelet. What is it, Sophia? Maria asked. The name, she whispered. I remember something else. Daniel. He wasn't just Daniel. He told me his name was Daniel Leo. He told me why. Her eyes grew wide with an old fear. Why, honey? Because of the man with the ring, Sophia said, trembling. Daniel was hiding under a bed. The man was yelling at Sister Catherine. He called him Uncle. And he told her, you will call him Daniel. Leo is gone. Leo Croft is dead and buried. Do you understand me? And Sister Catherine, she cried and said, yes. Miguel Vargas closed his eyes. The final piece. Uncle. We have to call Mr. Croft, Maria said. No, Miguel said. The phones could be. I'll tell the guard. He can relay the message. Stay here. Lock the door behind me. Downstairs, the front doorbell rang. The sound echoed in the foyer. Mrs. Gable, her face pale, went to answer it. Julian stood in the deep shadow of the main staircase, his heart a cold stone. The heavy oak door swung open. Edward Vance stood on the step, a sad smile on his face. He held a bottle of expensive scotch. Edward, sir, Mrs. Gable stammered. Mr. Croft said he was retiring. Nonsense, Gable, Edward said, stepping past her, his eyes scanning the space. He needs family on a night like this. He walked into the hall. It was quiet. Too quiet. Julian, he called out. Julian stepped from the shadows. His face was a mask of utter grief. Edward, I told you, I just want to be alone. And I'm telling you, you're not going to be, Edward said. He walked forward, clasping Julian's shoulder. Julian had to use every ounce of self-control not to flinch. We'll have one drink, to them, to Isabella, to Leo. Edward's eyes were busy, scanning the hallways, looking for anything out of place. He saw nothing. Fine, Julian said, his voice a broken whisper. He turned toward the study. One drink. As they walked, Edward glanced toward the west wing. Place seems dead tonight, Edward said casually. Gave the staff the night off? Something like that, Julian murmured, pushing open the study door. It's good to be alone, but not too alone, Edward said, following him in. Julian moved to the crystal decanters. What are you? Oh, you brought your own. Only the best, Edward said, setting the bottle on Julian's massive desk. As he did, his eyes landed on the small, folded crayon drawing. Julian's heart stopped. He had left it out, a stupid, careless mistake. Edward reached for it. What's this? A child's... Don't, Julian snapped. The word was too sharp. Edward froze, his hand hovering over the paper. He slowly turned his head, his polite mask gone. He looked at Julian. Julian realized his mistake. He closed his eyes, faking a wave of pain. It's just an old thing, one of Leo's. I found it in a box today. Please, Edward, just leave it. Edward's eyes narrowed. He looked at the drawing. A dark-haired girl, a taller boy, a black dog. He didn't remember Leo knowing any dark-haired girls. Of course, Edward said slowly, pulling his hand back. He forced the smile to return, but his eyes were cold. Dad, of course. My apologies. An old memory. He knew. He didn't know what he knew, but he knew something was wrong. He knew that drawing was a lie, and he knew Julian was lying to him. The snake was in the room, and it was rattled. The air in the study was thick. Edward's smile was a thin, brittle mask. An old memory, Edward repeated. He moved toward the fireplace, his eyes landing on Leo's portrait. He was a beautiful boy, Julian. So much like Isabella. It's a blessing she's not here to see this emptiness. It was a deliberate jab. He was testing Julian's grief. Julian flinched, but from the effort of not lunging at the man. We all miss her, Julian managed. He walked to the decanter. A drink? You said one drink? Yes, one drink. Edward's eyes followed him. It's just, I worry about you, Julian. Canceling the Singapore trip, hiding away, and now finding old drawings. He paused. Are you sure that's what it is? It looks new. The crayon is fresh. Julian's blood ran cold. He was a father, not a detective. It was in a box, Julian said, his voice flat, with his other things. I don't care. He poured 2 glasses of scotch, his hand visibly shaking. He let it shake. He needed to be the wreck. He handed a glass to Edward. Their fingers almost touched. Edward's hand was warm, the hand that wore the red-stoned ring. To Isabella, Edward said, raising his glass, and to Leo. May they finally be at peace. Julian could not speak. He could not drink. He raised the glass to his lips, but the scotch smelled like poison. He put the glass down, untouched. I can't, Julian whispered, turning away. I'm sorry, Edward. You should go. I'm not good company tonight. Edward watched him. He saw the untouched glass, the tremor, the agony. He sighed, a long, suffering sound. You're right. I'm sorry. He put his own glass down on the desk next to the drawing. I pushed. I'll see myself out. Thank you, Julian said, not looking at him. Get some rest, Julian, Edward said softly. He walked to the door. He paused. Oh, by the way, I heard you hired a new housekeeper. Maria, isn't it? How is she working out? Julian's head snapped up. The question was not casual. It was a sniper's bullet. He knew about Maria. He was connecting the dots. The new housekeeper, the canceled trip, the new old drawing. Edward's face was a mask of polite inquiry. She's fine, Julian said, his voice tight. Just a housekeeper. Of course, Edward smiled. It's just, I heard she had a daughter. A little dark-haired girl, about 12, I think. I'm surprised you'd allow a child in the house, Julian, after, well, you know. He knew. He knew everything. She stays in the kitchen, Julian said, his voice hardening. It was an emergency. Her bus was delayed. An emergency, Edward repeated. His smile was gone. His eyes were flat like polished stone. You always were a soft touch, Julian. Good night. The door clicked shut. Julian stood frozen. The front door opened, then closed. He was gone. Julian lunged for the intercom. Simon, he knows. He knows about the girl. He's on the move. I want a tail on him. I want to know where he goes, who he calls, everything. On it, sir. Team is in place. Simon's voice was ice. And sir, a message from the West Wing from Miguel Vargas. It's urgent. What is it? The boy, Daniel. He told Sophia his full name was Daniel Leo, and he said, the man with the ring. He told Sister Catherine to call him Daniel because Leo Croft is dead. Sir, Sophia said the boy heard the man. He called him Uncle. Julian gripped the edge of the desk. Uncle. And there's more, Simon said. A location. The lake house. Sophia said Daniel remembered a silver metal bird that spun in the wind. He could see it from his bedroom. Julian's gaze shot to a framed photo on the wall. It was the lake house. There on the corner of the deck was a silver metal kingfisher. A weather vane. He's there, Julian whispered. My son. He's not just a ghost. He's there. Sir, Edward is on the move, Simon's voice cut in. His car is heading east toward the county line. He's going to the lake house, Julian said. No, Julian said, his mind racing. The fire. That was a cleanup. Daniel ran away before the fire. Edward doesn't know where he was. He still doesn't know. He's not going to the lake house. He's going to find the one other person who knows the truth. Who? Simon asked. Sister Catherine, Julian said, his voice lethal. The head nun, the one who took the bribe. Edward is going to silence her before we can find her. He was already moving, grabbing the keys to his car. Simon, find me that nun. I don't care what it takes. Find her before he does. I'm going to the lake house. I'm going to see that silver bird for myself. Sir, you can't go alone. Let me send a team. No, Julian roared. You get the nun, I get the house. We end this tonight. He strode out of the study, past the portrait of the smiling 4-year-old. For the first time in 12 years, Julian Croft was not a ghost. He was a father, and he was going to war. In the west wing, Sophia stood by the window, peering out into the dark garden. Did I do a good thing, Grandpa? She asked, her small voice full of worry. Miguel Vargas came and stood beside her. He placed his large, weathered hand on her shoulder. He could hear the distant, angry rumble of Mr. Croft's car engine fading down the drive. Sophia, he said, his voice deep and certain. The truth isn't just a shield. Sometimes it's a sword. He looked at his daughter and his brave granddaughter. You didn't just tell the truth, the old sergeant said. You just loaded the cannons. The night was dark. The house was quiet. But the silence was over. The hunt had begun. The furious growl of Julian's sports car tore through the quiet suburbs. He was driving too fast. He didn't care. His mind was a sharp, clear instrument of rage. 12 years of fog had burned away. 12 years of numb, polite grief had been replaced by a white-hot certainty. Uncle. The word echoed in his skull. Leo is dead. Call him Daniel. He had not just stolen a child. He had murdered a family. He had let his own sister die of a broken heart. All while knowing the truth. The betrayal was so profound, Julian felt he might choke on it. His phone buzzed in the console. He hit the speaker. Simon. Sir, we've got him. Simon's voice was grim. Edward is heading east on the old highway. He's heading inland toward the county line. He's going for the nun, Julian said, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Sister Catherine, he's tying up his last loose end. We're on it, Simon said. Her name is Catherine O'Malley. After the fire, she was moved to Our Lady of Mercy Sanctuary, a nursing home. Edward's checkbook paid for it. Of course it did, Julian spat. He's been paying for her silence for 3 years. He's 10 minutes out from her. We are 5. We'll get her, sir, I promise. What's your status? I'm at the Lake Road, Julian said. The smell of pine was in the air. I'm almost there. I have to know, Simon. I have to see. Be careful, sir. We don't know what you'll find. The line went dead. Julian turned onto the private gravel lane that led to the lake house. He hadn't been on this road in 12 years. The weeds were high. The gate was rusted. He stopped the car. The house was dark, a silhouette against the moonlit lake. He got out. The only sound was the lapping of the water and the squeak, squeak, squeak of something turning in the wind. He looked up. On the corner of the deck, just as Sophia had described, was a silver metal kingfisher. Its wings spread. It spun in the breeze. He said he could see it from his bedroom window. Julian's heart felt too large for his chest. He ran to the deck, fumbling for the old key on his ring. It stuck in the lock. He slammed his shoulder against the door. "Leo!" The door burst open. The house was cold. It smelled of mildew, dust, and old memories. "Leo!" he yelled, his voice cracking. Silence. Only the water. He stepped inside. The furniture was covered in white sheets like a row of ghosts. His hope began to crumble. He was too late. This was just another dead end. "He was here," Julian whispered. "But he's gone." He walked, defeated, to the staircase. He had to see. He climbed the stairs, his feet heavy. He walked down the hall to his son's old room. The door was slightly ajar. He pushed it open. The room was bathed in moonlight, and someone was there. A figure, small and thin, was sitting on the edge of the child's bed, looking out the window, looking at the spinning silver bird. It was a boy. He looked to be about 14. He was wearing old jeans and a dirty sweatshirt. His hair was long and dark. He heard Julian and spun around, his eyes wide with fear. He scrambled to his feet, grabbing a small piece of firewood, holding it like a club. "Get out!" the boy hissed. "This is my place. Get out!" Julian stopped. He couldn't breathe. The boy was thin. He was terrified, but his eyes, they were his mother's, bright, inquisitive, and full of a light he thought was gone forever. I'm not here to hurt you," Julian said, his voice a raw whisper. He held up his hands slowly. "Everyone says that," the boy said, his voice shaking. He was trying to be brave, but he was just a child. "Who are you? How did you find this place?" I used to live here," Julian said, his eyes scanning the boy's face. This was my son's room." The boy's defensive posture wavered. "Your son?" "His name was Leo," Julian said, his voice thick with tears. The boy's arm, the one holding the firewood, dropped slightly. "What did you say?" "Leo," Julian repeated, taking one small step forward. "He had a dog, a big black dog, a Labrador retriever." The boy stared, his mouth falling open. "Max," he whispered. "Yes," Julian choked out. "Max, he loved to chase the squirrels. He would bark and bark, but they were always too fast." The boy's face, so hard and weary, began to crumple. The memory was clear. It was his memory. "How?" the boy whispered, his eyes filling with tears. "How do you know that?" "I was here," Julian said, the tears now streaming down his own face. "I was on the deck. I was watching you." The boy looked at Julian. He saw the dark hair. He saw the searching eyes. "You," the boy said. "You're the man from the picture. The one I tried to draw." "I am," Julian said. He couldn't move. I'm your father. I'm Julian." The boy just stared, the tears rolling down his cheeks. He had been alone for so long. He had run from the home, found the estate gate, but it was too scary. So he had come here, to the only other place he remembered. He had been living in the ghost house for 3 years, surviving on what he could steal from nearby homes. "Dad?" The word was a foreign sound on his tongue. It was a prayer he had given up on. "Leo," Julian sobbed. He didn't rush. He just opened his arms. The boy hesitated for 1 second. Then the firewood clattered to the floor. He lunged forward, collapsing against Julian's chest, his small, thin arms wrapping around his father's neck. Julian held him, his entire body shaking. He held his son. He was real. He was alive. He was warm. "I found you." Julian wept into the boy's hair. "Oh God, Leo, I found you." 2 days later, sunlight streamed into the study. Julian sat on the sofa. Leo, who was still getting used to his own name, sat beside him. He was clean, dressed in new clothes, but he still looked at everything with a weary gaze. Across from them sat Sophia, Maria, and Sergeant Miguel Vargas. "Edward is in federal custody," Julian said, his voice clear. He confessed everything. The kidnapping, the home. He blamed me for Isabella's unhappiness. He wanted to take the one thing that mattered. He never thought she would die from it. "He's a monster," Maria whispered, her hand on Sophia's shoulder. "He will pay for what he did," Julian said. "So will Sister Catherine. She provided testimony in exchange for a reduced sentence. It's over." He turned to the old sergeant. "Miguel, your granddaughter, she's a hero. She saved my son. She saved me. I owe her a debt I can never repay." "You owe her nothing, Mr. Croft," Miguel said, his voice firm. "She did what was right. The truth is a shield." "It is," Julian agreed. He then looked at Sophia. "Sophia, you are the bravest person I have ever met. I want to set up a trust for you, for your education. Anything you want to be. A doctor, a lawyer, anything. It's yours." Sophia looked at her grandpa, who nodded. "Thank you, sir," she said. I think I know what I want to do." "What's that?" Julian asked. "I want to find people," Sophia said, her dark eyes certain. "Like you found Leo. I want to find the ones who are lost." Julian felt a real, genuine smile touch his lips. "Then you will." Leo, who had been silent, turned to Sophia. You were the little dark-haired girl, the one with the bracelet." Sophia nodded, blushing. You told me I wasn't an orphan," Leo said, a new memory surfacing. "You believed me when no one else did." "I remembered your eyes," she said softly. Julian stood up. He looked at the portrait over the fireplace. Then he looked at the real, living boy beside him. "This house has been a crypt for a dozen years," Julian said. He looked at Maria. "Maria, your job as a housekeeper is, of course, finished. However, I am in need of an estate manager. Someone I can trust. Someone to help me bring this place back to life. The salary would be considerable. There is a 5-bedroom home on the property. It's yours if you and your family would honor me by staying." Maria looked at her father, her eyes wide with tears. Miguel Vargas looked at Julian Croft. He saw a man who had been humbled. He saw a man who was, at last, a father. Miguel nodded. "We would be honored, sir." Later that afternoon, Julian and Leo stood on the grand terrace overlooking the gardens. It was the first time they had been alone. "It's big," Leo said. "It's too big," Julian agreed. He put a hand awkwardly on his son's shoulder. "Leo, I'm sorry. I stopped looking. I gave up." Leo looked up at this strange, powerful man who was his father. "But you found me." "No, son," Julian said, his voice thick. He looked across the garden where Sophia and Miguel were walking. "She found you. She found us all." A forgotten portrait held the key, but it was a child's truth, a memory that refused to be buried, that had unlocked the door. The grief was now a scar. For the first time in 12 years, the house was not silent, and Julian Croft was not alone. And that's where we will end our story, a 12-year mystery solved by the most unexpected witness. I hope this journey gave you a chance to drift for a bit, to get lost in the what if. What were you doing while Julian's world was turned upside down? I'd love to know if you were listening in the car, on a walk, or just getting cozy. Drop a line below. I read every comment, and your feedback is vital for us to improve. And if you want to make sure you're here for the next mystery we unravel, hitting like and subscribing makes all the difference. Thanks for spending this time with us.